I'm Scott Stanchak. I'm the Director of Mobile Marketing for the New York Times. My team is accountable for all the mobile marketing efforts surrounding our mobile apps and our mobile website. So basically that means all the acquisition efforts, trying to get new subscribers. And then on top of that, optimizing the experience in-app or on the mobile website to drive those conversions and get those people to actually, one, find us, but then be able to convert and become a subscriber. The competitive landscape of the news industry, especially in mobile, is as competitive as ever. And I think that goes across not just mobile, but digital as a whole. And it's mostly because you have all these free news sources out there. You have the BuzzFeeds and the Huffington Post, and you have the New York Times, which is built on a subscription model. And sure, there's revenue that comes along with it from an ad aspect, but really we're after trying to drive new subscribers. And one, it's how do you get people to be exposed to our content? And that could be on me as a marketer, it could be on our audience development team to actually try and cultivate those relationships, get our content in front of these people. And that's honestly the biggest the biggest thing to do, and to make my job easier, is for people to understand how good the content really is. And why I say that is because I know me putting out a subscription ad is not going to get someone to subscribe if they've never read the New York Times. I firmly believe that someone has to be exposed to it. They have to read the content. It doesn't have to be regularly, but they need to read content and understand that this reporting is better than anything they're going to find anywhere else. And I know that people and clearly we have millions and millions of readers, people do appreciate that. Then it's a matter of saying, okay, in the model that we have today, you have 10 free stories that you can read every month. How do you get someone past that 10th story to want to read that 11th and become that paid subscriber? We see ComScore data, we see data all over the place that the New York Times is up there, top 10, if not close to touching probably the top 5 for unique users on mobile. But one of the things that once you start to look through the list, again with the BuzzFeeds and the Huffington Post and stuff, they're an ad revenue model. And so their goal is basically to drive as much traffic to their sites as possible, which is a goal of ours, but our ultimate goal, again, is the subscriber. So I think, we're competing in, yes, the news space and news as a whole, all these content providers kind of fit under that area. But in terms of paying for content that is really good, really rich, those features that come out after a tragedy, unfortunately, a lot of times that happens, and if not a tragedy, but that in-depth reporting that takes months long, and it's this 5,000 word feature, I'll read through that, and at the end of it, it's like, if I wasn't a Times employee, I would without a doubt be subscribing to this. And it's a matter of getting that content in front of people, realize how good it is, and get them to convert to become a subscriber, and not worried about the fact that there's free content out there like top 10 cat gifs and other reporting. That's not to take away from what Huffington Post and BuzzFeed is actually doing, because BuzzFeed actually last year had a lot of really good stories, some stories that I really enjoyed, and actually that ad revenue model has afforded them the opportunity to be able to pay reporters to do that. But our ultimate goal is the quality of our content and informing our readers and making their lives richer by the fact that they can actually see what's going on in the world and read it from the point of view where they're not going to get this information anywhere else. The market for quality content, it's an interesting area, I think, today, because you have this younger audience, the BuzzFeed type audience, who might not have been exposed to what really good quality content is. And so it's a matter of getting people to understand what's the difference between listicles and quizzes, and taking the time to read something that really enriches your life. And that's what they're going to get with the New York Times, the content that is so good that you could spend hours on a Sunday reading through the app or picking up the paper and reading through it. We ultimately, the New York Times audience is usually an older audience, and with the release of NYT Now last year, we were trying to go after a younger audience. And it actually was a very successful app, and we had a lot of learnings from it. And in that process, we started to understand what a younger New York Times reader would be looking for. And in turn, that helps us build a better product on the core side, which is our main New York Times product, not just in the mobile space, but digital as a whole. But NYT Now was a mobile-only product, which we know that a younger audience, typically, that's where they're consuming a lot of the content. And we were exposing them to not only the content, and we still are, we're exposing them to the content of the New York Times by giving them several articles a day through there. And then on top of that, giving them content that our editors feel is really good from elsewhere. So there might be a Medium post, or it could be a Huffington Post story or Washington Post story. And you're reading through and you're getting a mix of really good Times content, really good content that we know our editors and our writers really appreciate. And then you start to understand the usage habits. And you start to understand, okay, now this is the audience that's ultimately going to eventually become a Times subscriber. How do you start transitioning that audience? And then how do you start to make the core product a little bit better to go after? I think myself as a marketer, we try to discern between who the Now audience is and who the core audience is, because you don't want to step on anyone's toes in terms of marketing and be bidding against each other and the ad networks and basically cannibalizing each other. And so we are trying as a marketing organization to position ourselves to understand each of these audiences the best that we possibly can. So when our marketing messaging is out there, we're targeting the right people are seeing the right messaging, and in turn, you're going to convert them to a download, or you're going to convert them to a reader, or in turn, you're going to ultimately convert them to a subscriber. And that's what it comes down to, and especially in the market today. You have to be getting your product in front of it. It's gone are the days where you have to put your product in front of everybody and hope that X amount actually come and enjoy the product. It's about putting your product in front of the right audience, and you're going to have higher conversion on that number, but you're not going to have the biggest top of the funnel. So making sure your business is whatever it is, whether it's news or any type of business that puts out content, making sure that your property is mobile optimized is essential. Google today now is actually putting mobile friendly tags on the listings there. So clearly, if Google is indexing your site, looking to see if that tag's there, then putting it in their search results, they're not only informing potential clicks and users that your site is mobile friendly, but clearly they're going to be weighing that heavily in their algorithm to get you ranking higher in search results. So making sure your mobile property is optimized is huge, and that's first and foremost. Secondly, you have the content piece itself, and it's trying to make sure that it looks good on the mobile screen by making sure that it conforms to it. There's the balance of, do you want to make it a really long form piece, which I think statistics as of late, typically it was like keep to under 500 words, but statistics as of late, people are reading a lot longer pieces on mobile devices. So I don't think length matters as much in that space anymore, but just making sure that the font fits the screen and it conforms to the device, rather just than the entire site conforming and just being shrunk down like a responsive design that's really not a responsive design. I think on top of that, making sure that the conversion funnel is optimized is the second biggest thing. And this purely goes for the people who actually have a conversion event. So a conversion event really is an action. So it could be, do you want someone to register? Do you want someone to make a purchase? Do you want someone to subscribe? And that's the action. Once you get someone to your mobile site, or even in your mobile app, you have to look at the experience. And I view the experience as a series of yeses. So if someone read a piece of content, that's one yes. You know that they're engaged in it. Now let's get them either to a second piece of content, or if they're really interested, they're going to go into our marketing landing page. And this is the Times example. They're going to go into the marketing landing page and see the different options that are there for someone to potentially purchase a subscription. So those are the next two yeses. And now you have to view that next piece. So let's say it's the marketing landing page. You got to view it from the eye of the user and always look at things from the user's viewpoint. And that's sometimes difficult because people feel like their opinions are the best opinions and their viewpoints are the way it should be. But you're only going to know by testing and going out and asking your audience. You start to look at that page and you say, okay, we have different options here. Are we giving too many options? We know that the next yes is essentially selecting one of the bundles. So what do you have to do to that page to get someone to select one of those bundles? It might be removing some of the content. It might be, making the terms a little shorter so everything fits to one screen size. Then you start to walk through the rest of the process, and especially as you get to the conversion funnel in terms of payment, it's so painful on mobile, especially in the mobile web space. Conversion is always going to be higher in app. It's one-click purchase. Apple and Google own your billing information, and they do even regardless of who's working with them. So we're never getting that information really passed back to us because you'd have to get someone to link their account after they make a purchase. And at that time, which it's not required, you would potentially understand, okay, now we have the contact information for some specific user. But regardless, the purchase options and the way to make purchases in apps is so seamless that conversion is always going to be higher. So it's like, how do you transition that onto mobile web? And there's definitely some one-click providers such as PayPal and Amazon Wallet, and some of the credit card companies are getting into the game now. But also looking at it and saying, what information is essential to get from this user? We don't need 100 fields to ask someone for. What information do we need to get them in and out? Because the purchases are going to be more impulse, they'll do it on the fly. If you have to make someone stop to think, someone not to feel secure on that page, then they're just going to move on and maybe never come back. So you need to always find, again, what that action is, the series of yeses, map it out, and optimize for that. The New York Times is really active in the mobile marketing space. I think it's a testament to, one, we've had really good success in there, in that space, but on top of that, being able to build out a team for me of 3 mobile marketers, all dedicated to different platforms, we know that there's tremendous growth opportunities on those different areas. We always evaluate the different marketing partners, and we're always willing to evaluate new ones and try out new opportunities. But we have to make sure that, as I mentioned before, not going after this wide net. We need to make sure that we take this marketing dollar and turn it into more marketing dollars. And that means going after an audience that we feel like is the most likely to subscribe. And I'll kind of divide it up into the app space and the mobile web space. So you have the mobile app space, and the action always comes from a download. And downloads are hugely important. They're a big factor in the App Store optimization piece from a ranking standpoint. And we can't, and I think the industry as a whole used to just go after running ads on within any app, within any mobile website, and then we're hoping that download translated into that action or that subscription or purchase or whatever you're selling. And now it's the point where there's so much competition out there in the App Store. Discoverability is such a huge issue, and there's ways to fix that within the App Store, but from a marketing standpoint, it's not worth just going out there and paying for a download. And my team, I specifically task them to optimize for the subscription. So we always make sure that we're going after the right download by taking these profiles of these users, and we go to Facebook or Twitter or Google or these other ad partners, and we say, here's the type of people that we want to make sure that we're getting our message out to through custom audiences, and using just data to make these decisions. It's all about data-driven decisions. And we take these audiences and we go out and market to them. Now I know that we're taking these marketing dollars and we're putting it out to an audience that has a higher propensity to potentially subscribe. And that's a huge thing in the app space. So we optimize against an LTV that we know we feel comfortable with, and then we'll back into a cost per install. But ultimately, if the cost per install is really high, it almost doesn't matter to me if that person is actually becoming a subscriber. And so that's why downloads, it's a statistic in the space that everyone always assumes is a huge metric and a huge driver, and it really is. It's a huge metric and a driver, but from a standpoint of putting money into something, downloads aren't really a huge concern. It's about getting that ultimate action in the end. On mobile web, I think we're still at a point in the mobile industry where there's not enough cross-platform data sharing to track people and their usage habits across screen. I mean, you can track some if they're on one device. If they're on their iPhone and they visit a New York Times app, then you could potentially find that same person if they're on your mobile website on that same iPhone. But if they're on a different device, you lose them completely. The only time you would potentially keep tracking them is if maybe they had logged in. So now you can start to tie data together. But it's like the Wild West at this point. And in terms of being able to target across platform, it's becoming more difficult. You need pixels and you need SDKs, and there's no all-in-one solution. But we also understand on mobile web that there's a huge value for it. And we know that on mobile web we can do we can be in parity with a lot of what we're doing on the traditional website in terms of doing our specific sales, our Labor Day sale, and customizing the experience for the user when they come there. And that was a big undertaking in 2014, was getting a lot of our especially our sales just in parity to what we were doing on the website, making sure that our different marketing assets were optimized on the mobile web for these different promotional periods. And we didn't have that before. And we saw a huge success in being able to get that parity in place. But mobile web, for me, a lot of the effort, and I think we're getting to a much better place, has been what I alluded to before about optimizing the conversion funnel. It's about trying to fix what's on site already, knowing that we have a large audience. We have a large audience in the apps. We have a large audience on the mobile website. That's a huge get for us. We know they're already reading us. How do we convert that audience? It's not always, especially on mobile web, it's not always about continually drawing new people there, because our audience development team is doing an awesome job with that. And we as marketers, yes, we're going to continually try to drive new people, and on mobile web, we're going to do the same thing as in apps. We're going to try to drive the right people to the mobile website to try and get them to convert. But again, it's also realizing we have this huge audience that's not subscribing and is reading, and how do we work closely with our audience development partners and our social team internally to say, all right, we're getting these people that are reading us a lot. Now let's get them to take that next step. And sometimes it's fixing the marketing assets and optimizing it. Sometimes it's cleaning up the checkout page and the flow. But a lot of times too, it's about exposing the content. And that's what it comes down to a lot of times too. It comes down to the quality of the content, the quality of the product. And if they enjoy that, even if the marketing isn't great, which I think it is great, even if it's not, someone is still going to go ahead and subscribe. The New York Times, especially in the mobile space, is all over the place. We're on every single platform that you can be on: BlackBerry, Windows, iPhone, Android, tablets, everything. We have partner apps where we're in Google Newsstand, we're in Flipboard, we have print, we have web, we have mobile web. You have to be where the reader is. And you have to serve the content too, how the reader actually wants to read the content. There's been a lot of, as I mentioned with NYT Now, it was an interesting use case because it delivered content with the morning briefing and the evening briefing. It delivered the things you needed to know during the day that, one, was going to inform you for the rest of the day, and then two, in the evening, recap the day for you. And so you went throughout your day and you felt knowledgeable. You could stand around the water cooler and you would have some context to know what's going on. And then at the end of the day, on your way home, some people are so busy. There's often days where I feel it's been days on end where I haven't even seen the news to see exactly what's going on outside of what a breaking news alert is or what I've seen in the top news feed. And NYT Now had great success with the briefings, and they're actually in the core app right now. But it showed that people want news in a specific way, and they want to read these quick hits, and if they want more, then we'll drive them to the more in-depth New York Times content. I think that's one example of how we're trying to innovate and be where our readers want to be, or deliver content how our readers want to read the content. You also see these mediums like podcasting and Serial with the long form content. It's funny, like Serial became really popular, but it's almost a story that you feel like you would have read in the New York Times and would have been a Sunday feature that was 5,000 words, and you would have just sat there just like mind blown the entire time. But it was because it was put on that digital platform where people could listen, and you created this habit of it, and that's what the New York Times is about too. It's about creating this habit in reading, and Serial was such a habit, and it was for me, and I started listening, I think week 3 or so, and it was great because it's like Netflix. Like you can continually listen without feeling like the what's next and having to wait a week. But it was a big, I think it showed that people are really interested in something like podcasting. So it shows that maybe that's another way to deliver news, and that's something potentially the newsroom is working on. I'm not fully sure what the next piece is. And actually NYT Now was a sponsor of 2 episodes of Serial. So clearly the New York Times really thought it was a great product, and we thought it was a great audience. We thought it was a great fit for the audience that NYT Now is, and it was. We saw really great results from it. And I think those type of things, like a Serial with a podcast, or blogs, or big infographics and multimedia. I think the more other people start to do that, and the Times is so good at that kind of stuff. The Times with the Upshot is the new, was something that got created last year, and the graphics and the video and everything that they're putting out on a regular basis is so good, and you see so much positivity on Twitter about the content and the uniqueness of it. But you got to get that next audience in to understand it, not just the people who have always been reading the New York Times. And I think when you have other products such as a Serial that's out there and making people interested in something like long form content, that's when more people might come to the New York Times. Having a mobile app is so important for any organization, and it typically means better retention, better engagement. And the example that I always give is in the banking industry. If I'm a Chase customer, I'm not going to have a Bank of America app on my phone. You want an app that actually it serves as a value to you. And there was a recent statistic that said that the top 3 apps on your phone use about 70% of your app usage time. And if you think about it, I started going back and thinking about the apps that I use, and you have the Evernotes, and you have the New York Times app, and then maybe Twitter. And I'm like, yeah, that's actually right. And then the rest of the share is very little. So it's so powerful to have an app. And where it's also really valuable is, myself as a marketer, it's, yes, you drove someone there, you got someone to download your app, but then how do you further engage with them to make sure that they continually, one, read, but then also eventually want to subscribe? And that's where my enhancements that I work with my team to implement are huge. And there's a lot of techniques, and where it gets really interesting, especially in the mobile space, is the phone's the most personal device. The action that everybody's doing these days is taking it out of their pocket and looking at it. And with push notifications and in-app messaging, being able to deliver contextual, personalized messaging is huge. And you can do it through email, but how many emails do you receive every day? You receive hundreds of emails every day. And even if the Times or another brand was something of interest to you, you might feel overwhelmed that day and just not want to deal with that email and not look at it. Email's still one of the most powerful communication forms, but the power of getting a message, a push notification on your device that serves as some type of value to you. In our case, it's always breaking news alerts. We provide the value of keeping you informed on a regular basis, such as a breaking news alert. That brings someone back to the app. And you wouldn't be able to do that, because think about if you were to send an email out every time a news event happened. That'd become a little bit much. But people accept it in the space that we're in the mobile industry. And I think one of the things we're starting to shift and become even more user-focused in mobile is the customized notification by saying, you don't have to just receive every breaking news alert that the New York Times sends out. You tell us if you want sports alerts, if you want New York alerts. That way, moving forward, you don't have the person in sunny Florida receiving a message that says New York City schools are closed because of snow. And at that point, you're like, do I feel bad for them? Or, what's this message? It doesn't relate to me. And there are going to be a lot of people who might turn them off at that point. So it's about providing a value, but also you're right in their face, because you know it's a device that someone's going to look at every day and many times a day. Then taking that information and transferring it in the app. So being able to deliver an experience that is superior, that makes sense for the user, where they actually want to subscribe. And it's a really exciting time in the mobile app space, because there's so much, I feel like there's so much still to be done, not just with the New York Times app, but I think in the mobile app space in general, where eventually we're going to get to a point, and maybe who knows where apps are down the road. They'll be maybe so integrated in our car and our refrigerator that we're not even using our phone anymore to get the news or to get your text messages or read your Evernote notes. But it's exciting because it's in the palm of your hand, and it's always viewed as an extension of you. And most people, there's even statistics out there that say, if you left your wallet at home, chances are you'd be like, I'll keep going. But if you left your phone at home, chances are you're going to go back and get it. And that's really powerful if you know that basically you're a piece, you're a brand awareness, and you have almost a brand affinity with that actual user. Now it's like, man, I have a one-to-one connection with them. I can do some big things with it. And you can't do that with the web. You can't, a bookmark is not the same as an app install and being on someone's home screen.